Election 2020. How to position yourself in terms of business, technology, and personal finance for 2021. So, it's the year 2020, and what a year it's been. Let me tell you, at the beginning of the year, I couldn't have told you how wacky it could have become. That said, it's about to get wackier. There is an election coming up in just a couple of weeks. That election is going to affect business, personal finance, and even technology to a large degree across the country, and maybe even across the globe. How can you position yourself to be successful in the post-election 2021 world? Well, we're going to discuss that next on this episode of BTP Fusion. What's up, you guys? You're watching BTP Fusion. On BTP Fusion, it's our mission to give you the best information on business, technology, personal finance, to position yourself to be your most successful self. Now, there's a presidential election coming up in a couple of weeks. I mean, if you've been living under a rock, you may or may not know that Joe Biden, Donald Trump are the two candidates for president for the respective major parties in the United States for elections in 2020. There are seats available in Congress and the Senate as well, all up for election, and the stakes couldn't be higher, particularly for the candidates themselves. But what about you? How are you going to be positioned in the post-2020 election world? If you were a businessman in, say, 1864, when President Abraham Lincoln was running against George McClellan, a smart move would have been to position yourself in railroads, in industrial capacity, things such as steel, concrete. You would have positioned yourself to be in construction, coal mining, things of that nature. How would you position yourself today for the current and upcoming business environment for the post-election world? In reality, it's not that hard to figure out. Examining policy positions on both sides will indicate to you how you should position yourself to be in the best place to profit in 2021. To go along with the theme of this channel, we're going to focus in on how to position yourself for business, how to position yourself in terms of technology, how to position yourself in terms of personal finance, so that you have all three sewn up. Let's talk about the business landscape first. In 2021, irregardless of who wins, a corona vaccine will be either out or on its way to being out, getting in early with companies like AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, GlaxoSmithKline, Pfizer. All these companies and a couple more, probably up to half a dozen, are all positioning themselves to be the company that comes up with the vaccine for the Rona. The company that does will drive the biotech industry higher, and if you're invested in them, your investment portfolio higher. So think about positioning yourself that way for 2021, regardless of who wins the election. But the business landscape could actually change in various ways. As an example, regulation. Now, the current administration is of the political philosophy that less regulation is better. I'm not here to argue one way or the other in terms of that. That has been their philosophy, if you will. That philosophical position has real-world consequences, and also the opposite has real-world consequences. That is all to say, depending on who wins, regulations will either continue to decrease or they might increase, possibly significantly, depending on the administration that comes in January 2021. To get an example of the kind of regulatory landscape we might be facing in 2021, one only needs to look at a state such as California. California has passed regulations that limit the ability of people to side hustle. For example, to use Uber and Lyft as part of their main income. In California, expect that sort of regulation to go online nationwide. It's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but if you have Uber as an example, you would effectively become a Uber employee or a Lyft employee. Any of the other sort of gig apps, you would become their employee, and they would be forced to list you as an employee on them. Now again, that limits your ability to side hustle, but it also gives you the ability to be, let's say, an employee for a limited wage with these companies. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, we shall see. However, expect that sort of thing to happen in 2021. Position yourself accordingly. If you currently rely on Uber or Lyft for side income, prepare to maybe have two W-2s. Two W-2s. That's hard to say. I dare you to say that 5 times fast. Renting out an apartment on, let's say, Airbnb might become a little bit tougher. While Airbnb is sort of a different business model than your typical real estate business model, it has been sort of popular in the real estate and entrepreneur space here on YouTube and other places. It has its advantages, it has its disadvantages. It has disrupted big hotel chains and the hotel industry in general. Depending on who wins, regulations might be in place nationwide to limit the scope and the capability of people to rent out their personal apartments and rooms on apps such as Airbnb. Small business growth and innovation in general might be stymied. The unfortunate truth of it is, regulations typically affect the people with the least resources the most. It's an unfortunate reality. It is what it is. Large companies tend to have bigger pockets to fund the lawyers and compliance officers needed to navigate a heavily red-taped environment. Like I said, it is what it is. Now, that said, the rise of SaaS solutions to outsource regulatory hurdles, regulatory red tape, and other compliance needs may in fact rise. For example, Intuit, QuickBooks, companies like that already help to outsource our tax burden to software solutions in the cloud. With a higher regulatory burden, innovators will take to the task, maybe I'll do it, of creating software that helps to navigate the red tape that will be the new, heavier regulatory burden. So in that sense, maybe small business won't be as affected, but it will be affected in that you'll have to pay for this software to help manage a red tape dividend, as it were. That said, it might be a good time to become an entrepreneur and maybe not an entrepreneur. We've talked about the difference between entrepreneur and entrepreneur in the past in different videos. Take a look at the card above. So I'm not going to go into a whole long spiel on it here, but essentially, the difference between an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur is somebody who takes a serious risk, capital, time, and other resources to start a company of their own or to become a partner of a company of their own. An entrepreneur is somebody who joins with an entrepreneur, maybe becomes a partner as well, but maybe not have as large a stake in the company. They work their way up, make sure that they have equity in the company, and in the end, profit similarly to the entrepreneur. But they don't necessarily take as large a risk as the entrepreneur, therefore their reward isn't as great, but yet and still, it is a great reward. It's the difference between a Bill Gates and a Steve Ballmer, or a Steve Jobs and a Steve Wozniak. In this case, Bill Gates is the entrepreneur and Steve Ballmer is the entrepreneur. Steve Jobs is the entrepreneur and Steve Wozniak is the entrepreneur. In a higher regulatory environment, it might make more sense to sort of ride the coattails of an entrepreneur who's already on the way up. Make your way up in the company, become a valuable resource by continuing your education, becoming the best at what you do by being invaluable to the company. And you too can be successful and position yourself well in the new business environment, depending on who wins, in 2021. With that in mind, stocks in big companies may become more valuable. Like I mentioned, red tape typically affects smaller businesses harder than larger businesses. This in turn makes larger businesses more valuable, as they do not have as much competition nipping at their heels. It might be the right time to invest in a Fortune 500 index fund, such as Vanguard's Fortune 500 index fund, VFINX. Perhaps the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF, VOO, or VOO, VOO. I'm telling you, I don't know who comes up with these names, but VOO is right for you. I'm a poet, and I know it, and you do too. There's a million of them out there for you to choose from. But generally speaking, investing in an index fund is sort of the safest way to invest your money if you're sort of an amateur in investing. Basically any investor who's not a savant level mathematician, because those are the only kinds of guys who make money day trading. Big oil versus the big green machine. So one of the things that's been sort of bifurcated in today's political environment here in the US is the source of our energy. Sort of the GOP old school conservative thinking on the topic is that oil is king. Mostly because it's worked in the past, it continues to work today, and when it's cheap and reliable, the economy in general is doing pretty well. The opposite opinion, represented by those sort of the Al Gore camp, the progressive camp in the United States political spectrum, believe that green technology is the way of the future. And in many ways it is. Their impetus is that it will help to reduce our carbon footprint. It will also help to clean up our air and our water. All these things may or may not be true, but depending on who wins, you should position yourself now to take advantage of either or both sources of technology. As an example, if a progressive wave catches hold in November, position yourself to own stocks in green energy companies for, let's say, solar farms, wind farms, hydrothermal plants, etc. If a red wave sweeps over the lower 48 in 2020, move yourself into stocks that rely on fossil fuels, coal, things of that nature. Depending on who wins in 2020, the real estate landscape may shift one way or the other. Currently, in the YouTube entrepreneur space, particularly in real estate, there are two schools of thought on what is the best way to make money in real estate. Is it single family houses, owning multiple single family houses? Or is it owning multi-family real estate? In other words, commercial properties greater than 4 units. What is the best way to wealth in 2021? Well, depending on who wins, It might be the case that owning large multifamily real estate may be the eventual winner. So the Grant Cardone versus Meet Kevin debate will be settled once and for all. You would position yourself, assuming you don't have the money to own a large multifamily property, you would position yourself to own REITs that focus in on that particular topic. I'll list some in the description down below. Tax policy may affect retail sales. In terms of technology, we just talked about this a second ago, but green technology would take off in a progressive wave sort of administration. Money and resources would be plowed into such ventures like never before. Again, we talked about solar, we talked about wind, we talked about hydrothermal, battery tech, 5G. Expect those green technologies to take off in a progressive wave 2021 administration. Position yourself accordingly. And in terms of personal finance, expect there to be inflation no matter who wins in the year 2021, but expect inflation to be even greater if a progressive administration takes over. Spending on things such as healthcare, infrastructure, many other things would be expected to increase in a progressive administration. That said, more money circulating in the system generally means more inflation. Me personally, I am expecting inflation due to some of the policies that helped to alleviate some of the suffering that occurred for the corona crisis. Whether or not it's mild, severe, or catastrophic really depends on some of the actions that the Federal Reserve takes. But in an administration where there is no limit to spending, expect inflation to be pretty bad to possibly catastrophic. I would recommend personally, no matter who wins, now is a great time to invest in a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin might be too expensive for the average retail investor. There are some pretty decent cryptocurrencies out there that are relatively cheap and could see an explosion based on inflation or hyperinflation that could occur no matter who wins the next election, and particularly if a progressive administration takes over. So position yourself accordingly right now. And no matter who wins, you win by subscribing to great content from various YouTube channels, such as this one, who specialize in business, technology, and personal finance information, and particularly in helping you to take action on such information. So be sure to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to click that notification bell. And don't forget to like this video if you liked this video, and drop a comment down below letting us know how it is you're positioning yourself for the 2021 administration, no matter who it is. Are you investing in cryptocurrency? What are your thoughts on some of the vaccine companies that are coming out? Inquiring minds need to know, so drop us a comment down below. And while you're in an engaging mood, click on one of the videos on the screen right now to take you to more great content from B2B Fusion. And we'll catch you next time. Peace.